All right, so welcome to the Meaningful Jobs podcast season one. I'm your host, Adrian, and today I'm hugely honored to welcome Robert Natalie onto the podcast. He's the CEO of Inspire Investing, and he's got a lot to share about how he got into wealth management, how he found meaning in his work, and to give advice to you basically to see what you can do better in your career to find more meaning in what you do. So welcome, Robert. Nice to meet you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I understand that before starting Inspire Investing, you actually studied in a completely different subject. I believe it's liberal studies. Could you maybe tell us
Yes.
a little bit about how you made that switch between
Yeah.
one
Well,
freedom?
my first job was actually teaching martial arts when I was in high school. And then like
Wow.
I had this dream. I was just gonna, be the barefoot martial arts teacher above, at the school above the Chinese food restaurant or something. Like that was gonna be my life.
Right.
Then I decided to go to school to be a fourth grade teacher. And so that hence the liberal studies degree. But I actually dropped out of college, didn't go back my
Oh,
senior
wow.
year because I started selling alarm systems door to door,
Right.
like part-time, like to put myself through school sort of thing on the
Yeah.
weekends.
Yeah.
And I made $96,000 that year,
Oh, wow.
working part-time on the
That's a
weekends.
lot of
So
money for a young kid.
this, and this is a while back. So, teachers were making a third of that, after graduation. Anyway, long story short, I ended up getting into sales and business, and
Yeah.
one thing led to the other. Did a lot of youth ministry work when I first got married, and yeah, and at roundabouts, I kind of ended up in the wealth management industry of all places after um, the uh, the company I was working for went out of business in 2008, and I
Mm.
found myself looking for a job.
Yeah.
Um, uh, One baby here and another one on the way. No
Yeah.
idea what I was going to do, and just really praying about a family-friendly schedule. I'd been working nights and weekends, and that was like not good for my kids and my family, and I didn't really like it.
Hmm.
And so I just figured I'd apply at bank jobs. So I ended up with a job at Wells Fargo Private Client Service in the investment
Right.
department. That's how I kind
Mm.
of started to learn the investment industry, really just kind of on the job.
So, like, were you really interested in wealth management from a young age, or did you just somehow stumble upon it?
No, it was not. I actually, like I said, I was looking for a job that was family friendly, and I
Hmm.
figured, okay, banks are open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's basically it. So that's a good schedule.
Mm.
Math was actually my worst subject in school, so it didn't really make much sense from that perspective, and it wasn't something I necessarily had man, I
Mm.
wish I could be in the wealth management industry.
Right.
And it was the job I got, and it was a sales assistant was the job title, and I'm like, well, I can sell and I can assist, and
Yeah.
you're going to give me $80,000 a year in full benefits, and it's just during the week, weekdays and good hours, so there we go. I'm going to take that job.
Right.
And yeah, and it turned out I did like the industry, and I took to it really well, and learned really quick, and got licensed, and moving up through the ranks in that world. Uh, so it was, I just see it as God's providence. I'm a Christian, and I believe God leads us in ways as we seek His will in our life, and certainly I could see that happening. It wasn't some grand plan of my own, right?
Wow.
So I'm thankful for how God has led me from that day and forward.
So you mentioned quite a lot about sales, and I guess perhaps you might be a natural salesperson from a young age. Like, how important would you say sales is in, having a successful career as a wealth manager?
I mean, there's a lot of different personality types that are successful in wealth management. Sales is one of them.
Yeah.
Um, there's plenty of men and women I know who are very successful, and they're not salespeople at all. They're analysts, or they're some other sort of kind of engineering mindset.
Hmm.
So it's really just about in that space, in the wealth management space, and you're working directly with clients. Or there's careers in the back office or portfolio management or what have you, right? A lot of different ways you can go. And I think an important part as far as like a career goes is just how has God gifted you? What are
Right.
your skills and abilities, right? And so that's um and how can you leverage them to the best effect, to care for the people that if you're married and have kids, then how do you care for that family? How can you just make the most of your contribution to help others, bless others, and and just kind of doing that introspection, right? So if you're not a salesperson, don't take a door-to-door sales job, right? I mean, that might not be that might not be the best way to go. But just know who you are, and find a place where you can really thrive, just being you. And I've found that to be very freeing in my life, and it certainly helps you be more effective in the work you do.
Would you say it came natural to you in terms of how you discovered what you were good at? Because I think for myself, it actually took me quite a number of years after graduating from college to really understand what I'm good at. And, that's why I then began my entrepreneurship journey. For yourself, like, did you struggle to, or did you use a lot of time to figure out what you're good at or bad at?
Yeah, I think my whole life has been that, and I'm still figuring things out and learning
Right.
things about myself. Hopefully, we all are. And it's just, one thing after the other, one step at a time. There's a really great book I read a long time ago. I recommend it often, particularly to younger folks trying to seek the path for their life, right?
Right.
Just called "Just to Do Something" is the
Just
name of the book. "Just Do Something" by a man named Kevin DeYoung. It's written from a Christian perspective,
hmm
but it's about helping you find a direction in your life, right? And you kind of have that what am I going to do with my life sort of question.
Yeah.
It's easy to get analysis paralysis and just
Mm.
try to think through all the variables and, well, what about this? What about this? And what if that? And it's just impossible.
Yeah.
So I think you just need to, do some introspection. Okay, what do I have right now? What are the gifts and abilities and skills and experiences? What are the opportunities in front of me?
Mm.
Which ones make the best fit, and just go for it and just do something. And if you learn along the way. You can always change direction and go a different way. I know I have in my life, and just hold those things with an open hand, and seek to really just do a good job wherever you're at. Um, and again, as a Christian, there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 10:31 that says, "Whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God." So that's what I try to do in whatever work I find myself in. It's just really seeking to honor God, which means loving Him and loving people.
Mhm.
And it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're doing those two things. It's gonna
Right.
be a good life.
I see. So, I understand you've got like a short stint in, well, maybe a few years in Wells Fargo, and then you actually decided to start your own fund called Inspire Investing. And I think based on my research, the most interesting thing I found is that you select which stocks to or which companies to invest in based on a stringent Christian criteria. Could you maybe let our listeners know like how you switched from Wells Fargo to starting your own fund,
Sure. Yeah.
and how you invest in companies?
Yeah, and that's again one of those things. It wasn't a plan, but I was happy as a clam working at Wells Fargo. I was in
Yeah.
Carmel, California, a nice little coastal town there near Pebble Beach and all the rest, if you know that area of the world. Beautiful, $1 million account minimums, second story office looking over the view of the Pacific Ocean. Just I had no plans to change anything right in that scenario.
That was
And then
like
I stumbled across really
okay.
by accident. Yeah, really by accident, this article online one
Yeah.
day about something called biblically responsible investing. And what that just means is you're paying attention to not just the financial aspect of a portfolio, but the moral aspect. Portfolio, what are these companies doing to actually turn a profit? Are they violating human trafficking issues in their supply chains? Are they selling pornography? Are they manufacturing abortion drugs? Like all these different things. And so I was just curious. I had never thought about that before. And so I looked in my portfolio, my clients' portfolios, and honestly, the Holy Spirit just gripped my heart on that. And because here I was president of our local pro-life pregnancy center at the time, and I also owned three stocks of companies manufacturing abortion drugs, which is a complete disconnect, right? And I
Yeah.
just incredibly convicting to me that I was in con- such a conflicting space and with my values. And then you go down the list, and there's just all sorts of things,
Yeah.
going on in these portfolios that I was totally unaware of. And basically, in 2 weeks, I just couldn't do my job with a clean conscience anymore. Frankly, I didn't know if I could stay in the business anymore because I'd never met anybody doing what we do now, if it was even possible to invest a different way.
Mm.
Man, so I just went home, told my wife, "Hey, honey, I think God's calling us somewhere else. Here's what I found."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, we got two babies in the mortgage, so what's the plan, right?" And I'm like, I don't know what the plan is. So we just started praying and really seeking God's will for our next season here. And was just really close to going to seminary, being some sort of vocational pastor.
Yeah.
Um, but the only other way I could think of staying in the business was leave the bank, start an independent firm that just did some sort of biblical type, something or other investing.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what to call it, right? And but that was crazy because I didn't have any money or experience or whatever, like all the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that you need to have. And but as we prayed, God made it abundantly clear. It's exactly what He was calling us to do, me to do. And so about 2 months later, I made the incredibly frightening decision to leave the bank, left my clients with the team I'd been with previously, started over from scratch, just me and a laptop, less than 2 months of savings in the bank, fully prepared, never to pay my mortgage ever again in my life.
Right.
But knowing without a shot of a doubt, this is exactly what God has called me to do. And there's nothing else I could possibly do except this. Even if it was a complete miserable failure, this is what I have to do. Right. And like,
Yeah.
okay, Lord, your turn. Your time to show up. Right. Here we are. And I started sharing the story with people about, educating them about what I'd found and
Mm.
saying, here's what I found, here's what I'm doing. And they had the same reaction I did. It was crazy. Their eyes got big, their jaw hits the floor, like, wow, I've never thought about that before. How do I find out what I'm invested in? What does it look like to invest differently? And the business started booming. And so I had to actually start looking for another advisor to join me in the firm to help with the growth, which was never part of my plan. I had no grand vision to start any sort of enterprise. But one advisor led to two, led to five, to 10, to 20, to within a couple of years, mentoring hundreds of Christian financial advisors all over the United States
Mm.
who had somehow heard about from a friend of a friend of a friend about what was
Yeah.
going on over in our little neck of the woods.
Mm.
And they were having the same sort of conviction experience I had. And they're like, I have to change how I'm running my practice. How are you doing what you're doing? Can you help me? So we
Mm.
did. And obviously God was at work. He was doing something, opening the eyes of his people to this huge issue
Mhm.
and opportunity. And one of the problems was there was not a lot of product to use. So um, as we're mentoring these advisors and running our practice, there was just, we kept getting the question, where would you find a low cost index based, like biblically responsible investment solution to use? Because that's how I built my practice. It's a big, it's a big thing in the investment industry, is index investing. And the answer was nowhere. There just was no product. So we tried and tried and tried to get actual asset management companies to launch product for us. And um, there's a lot of interest because there was a lot of money coming in the door, but
Right.
when we got down to the values that we're screening for, these secular firms just, couldn't see themselves doing that from a political standpoint or what have you. And so that just left us in 2015 sitting around our little table in the office, and saying, I guess that means us. Let's figure it out. So did it again. About three or four of us left our retail practice, left our clients with the rest of our team, started over from scratch, no money, no clients, started Inspire Investing with that name, new company,
Mm.
with the goal of investing in the most inspiring, biblically aligned companies in the world, right? We're going to kick the bad actors out, yes, but where are the best companies that are like really blessing the people that they interact with, their customers or communities, workforce in the world? And let's make low cost indexes out of that.
Mm.
Um, it was pretty cool how it started growing again. And then all
Right.
of a sudden, like we had this 20-year, like big, huge goal. It wouldn't it be cool to have an ETF one day, an exchange traded fund,
Yeah.
which is like if it trades on the New York Stock Exchange, people can buy it all over the world.
Yeah.
That'd be super cool. And it became a 2-year reality, right? We're on the New York Stock Exchange closing, ringing the closing bell,
Yeah.
and launching our first two funds on a wing and a prayer, a lot of top ramen, beans and rice. But
Yeah.
and then the next day we're on the front page of the New York Times,
Wow.
and then we're in the
That
Financial
was in
Times.
2018, was it around that time?
2017. Yeah,
Oh,
2017, February 2017. And then, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, hundreds of articles
right.
start coming out. We didn't have a PR team. The Lord
Wow.
blessed it.
So
Fast
you
forward
just kind of grew
today.
organically then, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, organically. I mean, there's this huge market, right? There's people of faith
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah.
And, I think most people would be hard stretched to name a firm or anyone who's actually focusing on the faith-based market in any sort of
Mm.
significant, meaningful way to provide products that are aligned with the deeply held values.
Yeah.
And so here we are, and there we go. So now fast forward, we're managing about $2.1 billion.
Mhm.
And we've been in the top three fastest investment firms in the nation, fastest growing investment firms in the nation for a number of years running. Inc. 5000 top quartile, Financial Times fastest growing public-private company
Yeah.
in North South America. Just glory to God, because obviously this was not part of my plan. Like I mentioned, it's just God's plans are better than ours, and if we seek Him first in all we do, He is faithful to provide and lead us. And it doesn't mean financial, wealth and success. That's not it at all. But there's always a blessing, in my opinion, when we seek Him first in more than just financial,
Mm.
more important ways. But I'm thankful that in our case, He saw fit to bless our business and grow this movement and help us to um, reach and really just serve people of faith all over the world, to help connect their deeply held values with such an important part of their life, which is how they're saving and investing for the future.
Mm. Well, I always admire people who can actually make the jump from having a stable job into starting their own business or switching jobs without even having a job offer. And I guess as Christians, we've got the benefit of God who will lead us in making decisions. But to the non-believers of our listeners who might be thinking of, making a job switch, they don't believe in God though. Like, what advice would you give to these people, like, in terms of whether they should make a, switch in their career or not?
Mhm. Well, there's a in Proverbs again, whether you believe in God or not, there's wisdom, and it says in Proverbs that if you seek wisdom like silver and gold,
Yeah.
that you will receive it. You'll find it.
Mm.
Um, we believe that God gives it to you, whether you're a believer or not. If you seek wisdom, God will give it to you. He's trying to show you Himself, and ultimately, I would say, seek the Lord. Like, seek God. He's there, and He wants to help. He wants to be a blessing to you. He made you for a purpose. And so, in all sincerity, I would say, seek after Him and test Him in that.
Mm.
Um, but definitely seek wisdom. There's wise people. There's wise counsel. There's podcasts like this.
Mm.
There's I'm happy to talk to people, as much as I can. I do
Mm.
have a busy schedule, but I'd love having conversations and help people out, and if there's a way I could be helpful, I would love to do that. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just, again, just do something, right?
Mm.
Don't just sit and think. Think for a little while, and then
Action, I
go,
guess. Yeah.
act, right? Do
Yeah.
something.
Right. Really, really inspiring, I think. So I've always been fascinated by you being a Christian, but also being, a wealth manager, because these two terms might be an oxymoron in terms of some people's, viewpoints, whether they are a believer or not. How would you say, how difficult would you say is being, a Christian, but also managing such vast amounts of wealth?
Right. Right. Yeah, it is. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, you can be a sincere follower of God, person of faith, and be wealthy, but it is dangerous. There's plenty of warnings
Yeah.
about wealth, and there's perhaps few things in the world that will take our eyes off of God and off of the good, pure, and true and beautiful,
Mm.
um, than money,
Yeah.
right? The pursuit of power and money and greed. And even if we don't think we're greedy, just the desire to be rich, um, is really deceptive.
Yeah.
And, Jesus warned about it. Um, However, money is not evil. The Bible doesn't teach that. Money is the root of all sorts of love of money is
Yeah.
the
Love of
root of
money.
all sorts of evil. Love of money, but money itself is sort of a neutral thing, right? So it's a high calling, as many callings are.
Yeah.
We take that very seriously here, and it is a sobering thought that as we're advising people on how to interact with money, right? How to invest it, certainly, but even how to like what's our heart posture towards money? Like how does that control our life, or are we in control of it, right? Do we serve God with our money, or do we serve God money as our God?
Right.
Do we help other people with their money, or do we um, take money from people as often as possible?
Yeah.
There's two roads, and man, it makes a lot of difference
Mhm.
how your life ends up,
Yeah.
how you interact with money and the role that plays. So that's how we seek to really, with sober-mindedly and really sincerely, point people, Christians and non-Christians, to just a proper relationship with money, where it's a blessing in your life. It's a blessing through your life to other people, in a love your neighbor sort of way, and not in control of your life. Not an anxiety causing, idol in your life,
Mhm.
which is just a terrible way to live.
I guess you must have had, temptations in the past, being so involved with money on a daily basis. Like,
Mhm.
how do you prevent yourself from falling foul of these temptations?
Yeah. Yeah, um, I'd say like for me personally, in the area of wealth and whatnot, pride is always a temptation and anxiety, worry. I mean, running a business, especially
Yeah,
in the startup days, is like I don't know, there's days away from making payroll, and like there's not money in the bank. I don't know what's going to happen, right?
yeah,
And the Lord has been faithful. We've always come through. It's just been story for another day, but miraculous how God has provided for us.
yeah,
But in those moments, right, we all have them, whether it's just in our family where
mm,
we're kind of prone to worry
yeah,
and being
yeah,
anxious about financial things. For me, I can only just speak for me, is I just take those to my God. I
yeah,
take them to Jesus, and he says in his word to cast all your anxieties upon him because he cares for you. And whether you believe in him or not, he still cares for you. And you
yeah,
can cast all your anxieties on him. And he proves himself faithful to help you just be at peace. I mean, because look, who of you by worrying can change anything in your life? Add a day to your life, add a penny to your bank account. Worrying does nothing but
mm,
cause pain and suffering in your life.
mm,
So that temptation, the antidote to that temptation towards anxiety and worry is really just having peace and trust for me and God. I don't know, frankly, if you don't believe in a God who loves you and cares for you, I'm not sure how you get around that anxiety and worry because there's not a whole lot else to hold on to sometimes,
mm.
and all the more reason to seek Him while He can be found.
Right, I see. Um, so, lastly, before I end, usually I'd ask my guests the
Set up your
most
device using a screen
important
reader. Turn
soft
up
skills
narrator
that you
by
think are
pressing Windows
important
plus
in
Control.
your career, and how you find meaning in work aside from money. So maybe could you first of all tell us a little bit about the most important, soft skills that you think are important in having a successful career?
Yeah, I mean, soft skills, man. I touched on learning about yourself and just kind of knowing yourself well. That's incredibly important in a lot of different ways. Just your personality, those areas where you kind of continuously self-destruct, perhaps,
Yeah.
to put it that way, relationally or what have you. Just being aware of those things and then working on those things. um, Depending on your career path, uh, various degrees of types of leadership training or management styles.
Mhm.
Um, I believe wholeheartedly that if we seek to be a blessing, that we will be blessed. Again, not just in a doesn't mean you're gonna be rich and successful, right? Not that sort of blessing. Maybe, but not. It's not a math equation like bless
Yeah.
others and you'll be rich. That's not the thing.
Mm.
But you will have a blessed life, and ultimately, I think that's what we want, right? Relationally and otherwise. So cultivate uh, a life of learning,
Mhm.
cultivate a life that seeks to bless and like love others first, before yourself. And I think you'll just be kind of amazed at how
Mm.
the way God has created this world, how that just blesses you in return.
So I guess this ties into how you kind of find meaning in what you do as a fund manager. So aside from money, what would be the greatest source of maybe satisfaction from helping people manage their money?
Mm. The greatest source of satisfaction, and there's a lot of that. One of the greatest is when we get emails and messages and you know tweets and whatnot from people all over the world.
Mm.
I've never met them. I don't know how they hear about Inspire Investing or anything about what we're doing, but the way they talk about our business and our products, our ETFs, um, is not like people usually talk about a financial company or funds. They got tears in their eyes, and they're saying, "Thank you so much for doing what you do," because I've been wanting to be able to just honor the Lord
Yeah.
through how I'm investing this money. And I've had this like conflicting conscience for so long because I just know these companies are doing things that are just, deeply opposed to my values and biblical values, but I just don't know what to do. And, you can just feel the angst. And then along comes Inspire funds,
Right.
and now they have a solution, and it's more than just, hey, I found a new fund to invest in. It's
Mm,
this this angst is gone. I
mm,
am free to worship the Lord and how I invest his money, the money he's given me on his behalf. And there's such joy that they have, and it's like they're saying they're praying for us, and they're telling
yeah.
all their friends and family. It's just to see the impact that something like an investment fund,
Yeah.
can have just in people's soul is so meaningful. And in lots of different lines of work. I mean, you could have such an impact far beyond just sort of what your product category typically does for people. If you design it in a way to just really be a blessing. So that's certainly meaningful for me.
Right. Wow. That I think that's really amazing because I didn't really expect, customers to send emails saying, they have tears of joy in their eyes. And I guess that must be, quite a great motivation for you to keep on
Mhm.
expanding your business. Um, Usually, I also give, my guests an opportunity to maybe talk about how they recruit people in their company. Like, I'm not sure if you're hiring or if you might have hiring plans in the future, but for people who might want to get into wealth management or even into your company, what's the typical recruitment process like?
Yeah. Well, we're a fast growing company, so there's
Yeah,
opportunities, often. And if there's not one today, then check back tomorrow. That's the
yeah,
sort of thing. Oddly enough, we don't have like a careers page or anything on our website still. It's kind of like on our to-do list. We should probably have one,
yeah.
but we don't.
You should, I
And
think.
but how we've grown and have found the right people is really the right people have found us more often than not. We're such a mission-driven organization that we receive a lot of inbound requests of people who just like love what they see going on over here. Maybe they're in our industry, maybe they're not, maybe they're a career changer,
Mm,
and but they just reach out. And sometimes we have a job opening right then and there, other times not. But if you for us, it's just we want to hire for a cultural fit first. Someone who's just totally on fire for the mission that we're on here to invest, you know, uh, in line with the biblical values, right? We call it inspiring transformation for God's glory throughout the world and helping every Christian invest for God's glory. And so if that's like lights someone's fire, I want to know who they are, and they should reach out to us at inspireinvesting.com.
mm,
Um, and then we put them through the process and get to know them. And
yeah,
of course, we can't hire everybody, but
of
we
course.
that's the first step. So if you see a company that you just love, right, and just whatever, like what they do or what they stand for, or
Yeah,
whatever that is, just call them,
yeah.
email them, find
Proactive.
someone on LinkedIn. Like, don't wait for a job to come up. I would say, just reach out and say, "Here I am, and I love what you do, and I'd love to have an opportunity." And you might be surprised.
So lastly, personally, I'm really interested in, investing, how financial markets work. From a personal point of view, which sectors do you see growing,
Mm,
quickly in the next few years?
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to answer that. There's, over time frames and niches and whatnot. I mean, right now, this second,
Sorry, can I just
there's a lot.
interject? Because with the recent like bank crisis,
Yes.
do you think is it seriously impacting how you make investment decisions? And do you see it, having a contagion effect on the whole economy, not just in the US, but even in
Yeah.
Europe? Yeah.
Yeah. I tend to think that there's going to be more contagion. I hope not. I hope not on the scale of '08.
Hmm.
But recently with Credit Suisse and UBS being, put together there, Credit Suisse was failing. They're a huge institution
Yeah.
over here in the United States. You've had Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, some others. Um, and as this kind of worldwide economic situation of inflation and I don't need to list all the issues going on
Hmm.
for your listeners. I think we're all well aware.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems,
Mm.
and that's going to be a difficult situation. Now, there's always opportunities, and if you are an investor, I think when there is widespread challenges in the markets and companies are under pressure and stock prices are down, like those are typically the better times to buy, right? You need to be shrewd about when that is and how that is, and if
Yeah.
if you should somebody who can give you good advice about that, like a wealth manager, unless you're very studious on these topics, but
Yeah.
there's opportunities there.
Mm.
Um, Areas like biotech, I think there's a lot of potential in the future through biotech, huge innovations, life-changing, discoveries.
Mhm.
But it's a really tricky space to invest in. It can be,
Yeah.
very risky.
Mm.
Um, just in general, the faith-based investment movement is huge.
Yeah.
I encourage people, if you're a Christian, look at what's going on. Like, do a Google search, like just search biblically responsible investing and see what's going on. Millions and millions of people all over the world are starting to join this movement, and it's a really exciting thing to see, and
Right.
how we can just shine the light of goodness through the financial markets, which often are a place of darkness, right? So those are two kind of trends right there. And of course, we're in the faith-based investing movement. We see that every day. But yeah, for right now, I think there's going to be opportunities in the market as different areas and sectors and companies continue to have challenges, and so be prepared as an investor to take advantage of those, get some advice, be ready, and then hold them for the long term, and don't get shaken out when things get scary, because they
Mm.
probably will,
Yeah.
if not this year, sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Um, you've got to be hold to your convictions.
Mm. All right. Thanks so much for coming to my podcast, and hope to see you soon again.
Absolutely, my pleasure. God bless.